Welcome back to AI on AI, the show where we put artificial intelligence itself under the microscope. Today, we're dissecting that hot new preprint claiming answer matching outperforms multiple choice for language model evaluation.
Thrilled to be here. My day job is running model evaluation at a cloud provider, so this paper cut right to the bone for us.
Same. I lead the research group that built our internal judge models, and I'm itching to dive into the math.
I look after AI-enabled learning products for a Fortune 100, so I'm here with a user-centric business lens.
And I'm a computational linguist, been studying assessment theory since Squad 1.0 days. Lots of déjà vu.
I'm wearing the investor hat, looking for edge cases where evaluation shortcuts flip valuations.
Beautiful lineup. Let's kick off with the headline. Multiple choice benchmarks can often be solved without even reading the question. Wild, right?
Yeah, the choice-only classifier stunt wasn't just a gimmick. They fine-tuned a 4 billion parameter model that hit 83% on truthful QAV2 using only answer choices. That's the AI equivalent of passing a driver's test by just memorizing the shapes of the road signs. Historically, we've seen this in psychometrics. Frederick J. Kelly warned a century ago that standardized tests reduce learning to mere shortcuts. Same pattern, new medium.
It shakes our dashboards. We've been ranking vendor models by average MCQ accuracy. Turns out that's like grading chefs by how well they guess the dish from ingredient lists. Doesn't test actual cooking.
Okay, so what exactly is answer matching, and why does it leapfrog MCQ?
Picture a two-stage pipeline. Stage 1, the candidate model generates a free-form answer with 0 options visible. Stage 2, a separate judge model gets that answer plus the reference answer and simply decides same meaning or not. Conceptually, a semantic equivalence check.
From a product side, it's closer to real user interaction. Your chatbot isn't handed 4 options every time a customer asks a question.
And cost-wise, the paper's data showed the total token bill per 1,000 samples was actually lower than MCQ, because free-form answers are shorter. That's counterintuitive but CFO-friendly.
The kicker is alignment. They measured Scott's pie against human graders. Answer matching with a tiny 1.7 billion matcher hit 0.97, effectively human level, while classic MCQ sat at 0.26.
Wait, so even a baby-sized matcher beats big-ticket MCQ grading?
Precisely, because matching is a simpler cognitive task. Does A paraphrase B versus verifying correctness from scratch?
That's reminiscent of the 80-20 rule. 80% of evaluation pain evaporates once a reference answer anchors the judge.
We piloted this on our corporate training quizzes, dropped MCQs, switched to generative short answers, plus a 7B matcher. Our content team saw 25% fewer false alarms in learner analytics.
I have a portfolio startup in legal tech. They ran the paper's protocol on contract clause Q&A. Their model rankings flipped. An open weight model they'd ignored actually beat a pricier proprietary model when judged generatively. Saved them 7 figures in licensing.
That's a business case if I ever heard one. Let's get geeky. How does the matcher avoid being gamed by vague answers?
Good question. They enforce XML tags around the final answer, so the matcher focuses. Plus, numeric answers use relative error 1%. For text, they instruct the matcher that extra detail is fine, but missing any reference element is a fail. They also filtered questions to those with unique, unambiguous answers. That's crucial. If multiple correct answers exist but the reference list is incomplete, matching collapses.
Right. We built a pre-processing step that expands reference sets using retrieval and human curation, especially for code tasks where multiple implementations are valid.
And in domains like medicine, we had to add unit canonicalization. Users respond 150 milligrams versus 0.15 G. The matcher normalizes.
Let me throw a curveball. What about adversarial candidates intentionally stuffing 5 plausible answers? Could they slip past matchers?
Potentially, but they'd also risk triggering a mismatch if any extra info contradicts the reference. One mitigation is negative prompting. Instruct judge. If multiple distinct answers appear, mark incorrect. Plus, we can compute answer entropy. Higher entropy indicates hedging. Set a penalty threshold.
Now, the paper's contrarian nugget. They argue modern answer matching became viable only recently because LLMs crossed a capability threshold. Thoughts?
I buy it. 2 years ago, our 6B internal model misclassified paraphrases 30% of the time. Today, a 4B parameter Quen variant nails them. Moore's law of semantics.
It's the Cambrian explosion of judges. Once the metamodels got good enough, the old dependence on MCQ died overnight.
Investors used to treat MCQ benchmarks as gospel. I now discount any valuation deck that flaunts 90-plus MCQ accuracy without generative evidence.
Let's hit an algorithmic deep dive. That lightweight formal section. Anybody want to unpack the hardness hierarchy?
Sure. They define 4 oracles: discrimination, verification, generation, and matching. Discrimination, pick the right choice. Verification, true-false on any candidate answer. Generation, produce one correct answer. Matching, check equivalence to a reference. They prove discrimination is strictly easier than verification, and matching often easier than verification when AQ is 1. And empirically, they plotted model size versus performance on MMLU Pro. Discrimination saturates early, verification and generation scale together, matching hugs generation, but is easier to implement. That's your scaling law nugget.
Love it. Let's pivot to tooling. What does an enterprise need to adopt answer matching tomorrow?
3 ingredients. 1. Convert MCQ datasets into free form by discarding distractors. 2. Curate or synthesize reference answers. Exactness matters. 3. Stand up a judge endpoint. Could be an open-weight 7B model served at 0 temperature.
We wrap that in a Jenkins pipeline. Every new candidate model spits out answers, judge tags pass-fail, Tableau dashboard updates. No humans in the loop unless pi drops below 0.85.
That pi threshold became part of our technical due diligence checklist. If your internal judge scores under it, red flag.
Now, a strategic view. How might this reshape public leaderboards and marketing narratives?
Expect turbulence. The paper's figure 6 shows models like Wizard LM2 tumble while conversation-optimized models rise. Rankings will churn for 6 months.
Vendors banking on flashy MCQ scores need a new story. They'll pivot to human-level answer-matching accuracy quotes.
And that means procurement teams should ask, show me your generative accuracy scatterplot, not just MCQ. Otherwise, you'll buy the wrong horse.
In education, accrediting bodies could mandate open-ended evaluation to reduce teaching to the test. That's systemic impact.
Any limitations we should flag?
Tasks with inherently multiple correct outputs, translation, creative writing, don't fit pure answer matching. You need rubric condition judges. Plus, graph-structured answers, matching reduces to graph isomorphism, potentially NP hard. Verification might be easier there.
Finally, adversarial robustness is untested. We're pen testing judges with jailbreak prompts weekly.
All right, let's stir the pot. Contrarian view, anyone?
I'll bite. Everyone's celebrating cheaper evaluation, but I think the real bottleneck is reference answer maintenance. Facts age, regulations change. If that upkeep lags, your shiny matcher just fossilized last quarter's truth.
Fair. Our heuristic is the 90-day freshness rule. Reference answers older than a quarter trigger re-verification cycles.
We're exploring auto-refresh using retrieval-augmented pipelines that regenerate reference answers from authoritative data with humans spot-checking.
Classic trust but verify. Quote Dwight D. Eisenhower, plans are worthless, but planning is everything. Keep those reference answers in motion.
And remember Goodhart's law. When a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. If answer matching becomes the only KPI, models will learn to game semantic similarity.
That's why multimodal metrics matter. Pair answer matching with sparse DIY MCQ sets as a sanity check. Belt and suspenders.
Rapid-fire lightning round. Name one heuristic listeners can deploy tomorrow.
Use Scott's Pi point 8 as your go-no-go for judge reliability.
Apply the 80-20 review. Manually grade 20% of samples. If mismatched to 5%, recalibrate your matcher.
Always include unit tests for numeric answers. Regex alone is brittle.
Budget evaluation tokens at 10% of training tokens. Cheap insurance.
And bake reference answer versioning into your CI/CD.
Final question. What future implication excites you most?
Adaptive learning paths tuned by real generative proficiency, not guessing skills.
A public answer match leaderboard pushing open weight models to focus on reasoning, not pattern matching.
New benchmark design. Instead of harder distractors, invest in richer reference sets, crowdsourced, vetted, version-controlled. Tooling for interpretable mismatch explanations, so when a judge says fail, it surfaces which semantic slot was missing.
Whole M&A deals priced off generative capability audits. Answer matching will be the new diligence clause.
Love the ambition. Folks, we've spanned tech, strategy, and even procurement checklists. That's a wrap. Remember, not everything that counts can be counted, unless you pick the right metric. Thanks for tuning in to AI on AI. Welcome back to part 2. Time to roll up our sleeves and peek under the hood of answer matching systems, from tokenizer to Tableau.
Let's start with pipeline architecture. Think of it as 4 microservices in a relay race. First, the question router strips away options. Second, the generator API candidate model produces raw answers. Third, the matcher service evaluates RA using a frozen judge model. Finally, the metrics aggregator logs outcomes, deltas, and pi scores. Building on that, the matcher isn't just a simple cosine similarity check. We embed both strings with a context-aware encoder, then pass the concatenation into a decoder head trained on a contrastive loss with match, no match labels. Keeps false positives below 2%.
For execs wondering about cost, we ran TCO analysis. If you batch 128 prompts on an 8-tine A100 cluster, a 7B matcher costs about 0.4 cents per sample versus 0.6 cents for classic MCQ because of longer outputs. That's a 33% reduction. Finance loves that slide.
Real-world example. An e-commerce firm swapped to this architecture for product Q&A. Their feedback loop caught hallucinated warranty info in 48 hours, something MCQ couldn't even detect because the distractors never covered warranty.
Quick investor angle. When we underwrite AI vendors, we now look for that batching efficiency metric, tokens per joule. Teams that optimize matcher throughput usually have 15 to 20% higher gross margins.
Nice. Let's zoom into that contrastive loss you mentioned. Why not fine-tune with vanilla binary cross-entropy?
Subtle but important. BCE punishes mistakes uniformly, but in semantic equivalence, near misses are better than wild misses. We use InfoNCE. The similarity of positive pairs is pushed to 1, negatives to 0, with temperature tau equals 0.05. It preserves gradient signal for paraphrase edge cases. And we augment training with paraphrase, tense shift, unit conversion, even British spelling variants. That data synthesis is cheap. One pass through an LLM with an instruction like rephrase in 3 distinct but semantically identical ways.
Governance tip: log those synthetic references separately. Auditors ask, which answers are human-approved versus machine-expanded? Traceability matters under SOC 2.
On the UI side, we tag any near-miss, matcher confidence between 0.4 and 0.6 as orange, so SMEs can eyeball. It's the Pareto principle again. 80% of disputes hide in that 20% fuzzy zone.
Speaking of disputes, how do you handle numeric tolerance dynamically? An entropy approach?
Exactly. We estimate answer scale with log 10a. Then we set m equals max of 0.01 tine a, 10 of scale minus 4. That way, a 0.001 error on a billion-dollar figure isn't flagged.
That adaptive EPSA saved a fintech client thousands in analyst hours. They were drowning in false negatives because of floating point quirks.
But there's a surprise caveat. When the generator outputs a range, e.g. between 5% and 6%, naive numeric matching fails. We added a post parser that converts ranges into interval objects and checks interval overlap with reference scalars. And performance stayed snappy. Interval math is 01.
Let's touch on filtering MCQ datasets into free form. Some listeners asked, do I hand label 10,000 items?
Not necessary. We use a triage model we call Specificity Scout, thresholded at 8/10s on clarity. It passes 45% of MMLU Pro in about 30 minutes GPU time. Humans then spot check a 5% sample.
That's how we converted our compliance exams. Out of 6,000 questions, only 1,900 survived. But learning outcomes improved because we eliminated ambiguity.
For the questions that failed specificity, we auto-rewrite by fusing the correct option back into the stem. Example, original, which planet? Rewrite, name the planet with the largest storm, known as the Great Red Spot. Unique answer, Jupiter. There's algorithmic elegance here. We treat rewriting as constrained text generation with two hard constraints. The question must be answerable without context, and the reference answer must be unique. We enforce this with a Levenstein-based uniqueness check over a candidate set.
Awesome. Now tech leaders worry about model drift, judge degrading over time as language shifts. Best practice?
We snapshot judge weights monthly and run a canary evaluation on a frozen testbed. If Scott's pi drops below 0.85, we trigger a retrain with 2 times data.
That's basically SRE for evaluation, error budget for judges.
Investors call that continuous validation. Vendors that automate it show 30% faster release cycles.
And for domain drift, we layer adapters, LoRa modules fine-tuned on newest jargon. Keeps base models stable while capturing emergence like Gen IOPS overnight.
LoRa for lore, if you will.
Ha! Now, contrarian alert. Does focusing on equivalence impede creativity?
Potentially. Answer matching rewards conformity to known truths. If your product seeks novelty, you might weigh creativity metrics, divergent thinking, surprise alongside. We sometimes compute the KL divergence between generator token distribution and corpus prior. Higher KL often correlates with novel wording.
Business lens. Stash novelty in a sandbox first. A bank doesn't want creative exchange rate answers.
Unless it's an ad tech firm, then novelty boosts click-through. So pick KPIs that match risk appetite.
Let's end with a mini roadmap. Next 6 months, what upgrades should teams schedule?
Add chain of thought stripping before matching. Regex out thinking blocks so judges only see the final XML. Prevents leakage of rationale that could bias matching.
Integrate a multimodal matcher for screenshots or charts. Customers increasingly paste images.
Adopt the reference pack pattern. Store multiple gold answers as a vector set. Match your query's top K via ANN search before binary decision. Improves recall on synonymy.
Layer a cost governor. Set a daily token spend ceiling and back off to smaller matcher if you hit 90%.
And measure ROI openly. Publish monthly evaluation budget versus escaped errors so leadership sees direct value. Transparency beats hype.
Mic drop. Folks, whether you're a CTO fine-tuning models or a CFO minding pennies, answer matching just handed you a sharper knife and maybe a cheaper one. Thanks for staying for the deep dive. Until next time, keep your metrics honest and your judges sharp. All right, team, before we hit stop record, let's do a lightning round. Biggest takeaway, 1 sentence if you can manage it.
I'll kick off. Answer matching slashes, evaluation cost, and critically, restores trust in leaderboards by aligning with human judgment at near interannotator levels.
Building on that, the contrastive loss matcher pipeline proves you don't need frontier-scale judges. A disciplined 7B model with LoRa adapters is plenty for 90% of use cases.
From the trenches, remember that edge tolerance heuristic for numbers and the interval parser for ranges. They're the difference between green board and a 2 a.m. pager. I'll play devil's advocate one more time. Deploy creativity metrics in parallel, because overfitting to equivalence can suffocate innovative answers in R&D heavy sectors.
Boardroom lens. Token per joule efficiency plus continuous validation form a new due diligence checklist. Expect investors to demand both next quarter.
Nice and punchy. Now, for anyone jogging and half listening, here's the 90-second recap. We explored why multiple choice is fundamentally discriminative, how answer matching turns evaluation generative, and how even small matchers achieve Scott's pi to 0.9, beating classic MCQ by a country mile.
We unpack the four-stage microservice architecture, router, generator, matcher, aggregator, and showed it can run at about 0.4 sinks per sample when batched on A100s.
Technically, we dove into InfoNCE versus BCE, data-augmented paraphrase training, adaptive numeric tolerances, and LoRa-based domain drift adapters. People can lift and shift those recipes tomorrow.
Strategically, we saw real wins. An e-commerce firm caught hallucinated warranty text, a fintech cut false negatives, and compliance exams became clearer after specificity triage.
And the contrarian view. Answer matching isn't the whole story. Layer novelty or risk-sensitive metrics depending on sector.
Future-proofing means reference packs for synonyms, chain of thought stripping to avoid bias, and a token budget governor so finance stays happy.
Classic quote time. What gets measured gets managed, Drucker said, but I'd add, measure the right thing. Answer matching helps us do just that.
Couldn't resist. 80-20 strikes again. 20% of benchmark engineering delivers 80% of evaluation reliability when you ditch distractors.
And remember, Keynes, when the facts change, I change my mind. Snapshots plus canary tests let your judge adapt as facts change.
Final heuristic. If your matcher costs more than your generator, something's misconfigured.
Or your CFO is about to call.
Speaking of calls, expect analyst calls asking, what's your Scott's pi? Get ready to answer.
Closing credits. Huge thanks to our panel. If you like the deep dives, share the episode and drop us questions for part 3. We might even let the matcher grade them. Stay curious, stay rigorous, and we'll catch you next time on AI on AI.